One day until Election Day. And you're starting to see, I think the left realized over these last couple weeks, as the rhetoric got nastier and nastier, that they start throwing everything at the wall. The garbage. And now we have the New York governor saying that you were actually anti-American and anti-woman. But let's just go to the anti-American part first, because that's even worse than we've seen. And we've heard him see anti-woman before. That's because of abortion. And she's saying if you vote for any Republicans in New York's congressional races, which happen to be some of the most moderate Republicans, but important Republicans, to get to a majority, to make sure that if President Trump does win, that there is a House majority, it would take wins. And I don't think the governor in New York would be coming out this strong with that kind of language, telling basically still very close to half her state. You remember, even in these blue states, you're talking about maybe it's 65, not even 65, 35, 55, 45, 60, 40. So still a huge chunk of your state you're calling anti-American.
It gave me a chance to tie the Republicans running in these seats, the incumbents, closer to Donald Trump, and remind everybody, if you're voting for these Republicans in New York, you are voting for someone who supports Donald Trump, and you're anti-woman, you're anti-abortion, and basically you're anti-American.
There's tight races in the House there. There's a handful of these very tight races. That could be the outcome of who runs the House of Representatives. So the fact that the Democrats nationally are using state officials like Kathy Hochul to go at the governor, to go after congressional races, because those individuals might also support their party's nominee for president of the United States, who they will have to work with if he's elected and they are elected to the House of Representatives. But this idea that you're garbage and that you're anti-American, I hope it just spurs you to action. President Obama has been issuing some pretty tough talk, which is unusual because he wasn't very engaged in this election cycle at all when Joe Biden was the nominee, and then slowly got engaged in it more with Harris, obviously being more vocal at the convention, and with Michelle Obama speaking at the convention, and then also being out on the campaign trail when they realized that things weren't looking so good. And he specifically talked to, which I thought was pretty unique. He's talking to black male voters and saying that they are somehow sexist, and that's their issue, is they don't want to vote for a woman. And then you get this polling out there. It's like absolutely, it has nothing to do with that for people. It's literally just stop thinking of us all as just one group of people. But if you're a small business owner, you're looking at the policies. Have these policies been good for me under Joe Biden, or has it been tough on me and my employees and my business? Has it been tough to expand? Things like that, and of course the pocketbook issues. So now he's taking it to another level and trying to group people together. So now it's all Muslims and Jews, or Arabs and Jews should not vote for. Both can't vote for Donald Trump. That's an interesting way to say, like he's not too pro-Israel, and he's not too pro-Muslim world. So neither one of you should be voting for him if you're a Jew or if you're Arab.
Maybe you're Muslim American or Jewish American, and you are heartbroken and furious about the ongoing bloodshed in the Middle East and worried about the rise of anti-Semitism. Why would you place your faith in somebody who instituted a so-called Muslim ban, who sat down for pleasantries with Holocaust deniers, who said that there were very fine people on both sides of a white supremacist rally?
No one has done more for the Jewish people or the state of Israel than President Trump. And he did it in 4 years. And again, he did it amongst doing a lot of other things, but he knew that Congress and law had authorized him and any president to finally recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He did that. Former presidents, Republican and Democrat, could have, but they were too nervous because the State Department would tell them, oh, well, you're going to cause war. And in fact, so what did he do after that? He put together the Abraham Accords with one of our colleagues, Mike Pompeo, and people like Rick Grinnell, which was an unbelievable move to show the world that the issue, this Palestinian issue, was not seen as like a bar to do it for these Gulf states, predominantly Sunni Gulf states, to doing business with Israel or traveling to Israel, tourism. religious tourism to Israel.
Just upset with the blatant lies, like you had from Barack Obama. You're kind of repeating that very fine people on both sides argument.
The most
and we've seen it now even with the Liz Cheney stuff that's happened over the last week. It's like, no, if you actually are objective and actually hear what he said, it's the most artful way to say it, maybe not, but that is certainly not what he said. He was talking about, for that situation, was talking about people going into senseless wars. Now, this one, even Snopes, this was from back in 2017, even Snopes has said this was not accurate. This did not happen. They claim it as false, and they are pretty left-leaning, even with their own decision-making. So I think we need to remind people that when they hear those lies, that's what they are, because even he knows it's a lie.
Yeah, because Donald Trump says in the statement, and I'm not talking about the white nationalists or neo-Nazis that were there.
You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
Right. And what he was referring to there, Will, was that whole monuments taking down movement, that everyone who questioned whether or not we should be taking down all these monuments and how far will it go? Like, is it going to go to George Washington because they had slaves? Is it going to go to all of Washington, D.C.? And we were getting to those questions. I mean,
it was a real discussion.
Having those discussions did not mean that you were part of those torch-bearing neo-Nazis.
Right.
And in his full statement, he's clear, not talking about neo-Nazis or white nationalists. They should be condemned. But yet, they take the first part out, and they just run with it.
Well, because if you've seen the way that the left approaches everything right now, especially over the last 2 weeks, if the Trump supporters are garbage comment, the governor of New York saying that you're anti-American if you're voting for Republicans, they can only see one-dimensionally. So they lump everyone together in the group. What President Trump was saying there is that there were people at the rally that were neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and I condemn them totally. But I'm also not going to make these blanket statements that the left is so comfortable doing of saying that everyone who went there, I'm going to pick their motive and call them all white nationalists and neo-Nazis. And I think that is a very clear difference between where the right is we understand people having different opinions or different motives for a statement. And there are people that are bad on that side of that. And he calls that out. The left, though, if you vote Republican right now, you're anti-American. If you're a Trump supporter, you're garbage. That's what we've been told over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and this Muslim ban, it was 5 countries that were mostly failed states that were predominantly Muslim, and also countries known to have problems with terrorism. They could not verify who the people were that were leaving their countries. It was never about a Muslim ban. It was about a failed state ban in countries that had problems with terrorism, like Yemen and others, whose passports you could not consider good anymore. And because they did not have backgrounds on their own people, you couldn't just accept that as, okay, this person should be allowed into the U.S. without any further work. That's what that was. And it was temporary in place so that we could put systems in place where we had to do the background checks.